Now, according to statistics, this thing is engulfing not only our nation, but the world. This thing is overtaking not only the secular world, but those in the church just as much. I'm talking about stress today. Here's what I'm going to spend a couple of weeks on it. So for those of you who take notes, I want you to write out the word stress, S-T-R-E-S-S. And what we're going to do is we're going to use it as an acronym. So the S will mean something that will help you win the battle against stress when it comes upon you. Now, it could be anything. I'm going to give you my S-T-R-E-S-S. But I want you to write up your own. Because the S I had heard earlier in the week that singing is helpful for others. Stepping away is also a very good thing to do. Stretching, sighing. Just use your S. Find the S, and there's 3 S's. So there's a lot of things when you start being overtaken by stress that you can do. The T is one that you can think about, or talk to God about, or trust God in. So, stress. We're, of course, going to use our grounding verse in Philippians, the 4th chapter, where he says, "Be anxious for nothing." Have you ever just been overwhelmed and someone tells you, "Don't worry"? You want to punch them right in the face. Or you're really stressed out and somebody says, "Oh, just take a deep breath." Yeah, I'll take a deep breath. That's why me telling you how to handle your stress is kind of like last week's message. Does anyone remember last week's message? No, you don't, because you have to know it. You can't hear it. And that's kind of why God has called me to preach, because I don't really know something unless I teach it. But once I teach it, then I know it. I believe this is a command from God. Be anxious for nothing. I can't tell you how stressed out this steampunk festival has made me, to the point of just twitching. Okay, I never got that bad. But just overwhelmed. And throughout the whole week, God keeps telling me, he kept telling me, be anxious for nothing. Be anxious for nothing. I remember a time when life was simple. I remember being young and there were no computers. The phone was a party line. There was no video games. I played outside for hours. I'd walk amongst the pine trees with my basset hound, Shorty. Shorty was a friend of mine. We'd sit by the pond. And life was good. I haven't had calm moments like that in years. There's either television on or radio blasting or computers. I will watch television, work on the computer, and talk to somebody on the phone at the same time. Constantly going from 4 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock at night. And I wonder why I'm exhausted. So, and I think it's not just me. I think most of us are living a more stressful life now than we ever have in our lives. And yet we are stronger Christians now than we have ever been. So we cannot let stress win the battle. That was not me. Stop, I said. Go away. Why is that open? See, I'm stressed out as it is. Too many things going at once. Be anxious for nothing. So as I'm thinking about this, I'm saying, yeah, right. Well, what do I do? And the word stress kept coming up. Stress. I told you about my experience in boot camp. See, in boot camp, the whole idea is to stress you out so that you can handle stress. So the more stress that you can handle, then when things get really stressful, you'll be calmer. So my drill sergeant's motto was stress is the key to success. What happens in our lives, and I was going to use a juggling example, because what happens in our lives is we've got one ball and we juggle it and we toss it back and forth, and we can do that just fine, and we get to where that's nothing but a thing. So then we take two balls and we pick up two things, so now you've got your finances and your relationships, and after a while it gets pretty easy. So you grab that third one and you start a family. So you have your family and your relationship with your wife and your finances and your job, and you finally get three where it's going good, and you say, well, I can do something else. So then you grab a second job, and so now you've got two jobs and a family and a wife, and then you say, okay, well, I want to really serve the Lord now. So you grab a fifth ball and you just drop them all, and everything falls apart. And instead of going back to the three balls where you're good at, you pick those five balls back up, and you keep trying, and you keep trying, and you keep trying, and you keep... Sometimes you just have to step back. Sometimes you're looking at me like you've never been stressed out in your life. He says, I just don't pick up. I'm preaching to her today. Hallelujah. I know where I get it. The fruit don't fall too far from the tree, now does it? Your mom? Because it wasn't from your dad. Papa was mellow. When I knew him anyways. Of course, he was like 70 then. Let's just stop. That's the best thing you can do. I got a little stressed out this morning because I was behind. And I started preaching to myself my sermon that I'm preaching today. And I use the S for the stress to step away. Sometimes you really have to. The world is not going to come to an end if what you're doing is overwhelming you. The world is not going to end if you just step away. If you just stop for a moment. The world will not come to an end. Your life will go on. When I was in my 20s, I'd have a failure. And I would think that it would be the end of the world, total and complete disaster. Now I have failures every day, every week. And you realize failure isn't a total, and it's not the end of the world. You get to try again. You just keep going. Now, to go back to the juggling example, if you got too much than you can handle, then step back to where you were good at just handling the three things. See, because me as a juggler, I juggled because I enjoyed it. I mean, in Nichols, New York, there was a corner, one corner, that's all there was, the whole town. And I'd stand on that corner. And I would juggle for hours and hours because I enjoyed it. But I only juggled three balls. Didn't care about juggling 4, didn't care about juggling 5. So I became proficient at it. And it was fun, and I'd use different patterns and have all kinds of fun and just be and enjoy life. Enjoy the gift that God has given you. Sometimes we as Christians want to do things heartily as unto the Lord, so heartily that we get stressed out doing it. Now, do you think God smiles upon us being stressed out about serving him? Now, when somebody's doing something for you and they're just frustrated doing it, that breaks my heart to see somebody frustrated doing something for me. Well, I don't want them to do something for me if it's going to stress them out. God doesn't want you to be stressed out. Because if you're stressed out doing something for him, you're not doing something for him, you're doing it for you. So I wanted to give us some groundwork. And the best thing to do, the best example that I know of in the world is Jesus at his most stressful time. So let's look at him in the Garden of Gethsemane. We're going to begin right there where my Bible is not marked. In the book of John, 18th chapter. When Jesus had spoken these words, he went forth with his disciples over the brook Kidron, where was a garden, into which he entered and his disciples. And Judas also, who betrayed him, knew the place, for Jesus often resorted there with his disciples. Judas then, having received a band of men and officers from the chief priests and Pharisees, confined there with lanterns and torches and weapons. Jesus, therefore, knowing all things that should come upon him, went forth and said unto them, Whom seek you? Let's stop right there for a second. One thing that I noticed there was that Jesus often went to the Garden of Gethsemane. And then as I was looking through, Jesus loved his disciples. But he would often send them away and go off someplace by himself where he can be alone with the Father. Sometimes we just need that alone time. Now, as I look out through the congregation, I see some of you that have so much alone time that you don't know what to do with yourself. So that might not be so good for you. See, the S there might not be so good, but he spent time with the Father. Sometimes we just need to shut off the electronics. I know one of the reasons that I've had trouble sleeping at night is because before I go to bed, I usually do something on the computer or on my phone or on my tablet, and that blue light that comes from your computer triggers your brain to stay awake. So you've got to shut all of that stuff down. You've got to step away. Now, I want you to think about Jesus at this point. He knew all things that were about to happen. He prayed in that garden, Lord, if it be possible for you to take this away from me. He accepted the stress that was about to come upon him. So the first thing that we noticed in this stressful event is that Jesus stepped away to spend time with the Father. And he accepted the stress that was about to come upon him. And now after he was tortured and abused, a crown of thorn put upon him, and he's bearing his cross, he's crucified with 2 others. Something that I gleaned from that was that passage that talks about how God will never give you more than you can bear. And the things that have come upon you is not uncommon unto man. Sometimes when we're all stressed out, we think you're the only person in all of human history that's had to bear this much pressure. With these 2 criminals on each side, Jesus is showing us that we're not alone in our tribulation. there are other people going through just as much, if not more, stress than you are at this time. If we take our eyes off ourselves and our own problems and try to help other people out and work with other people to relieve their stress, it reduces our stress. I had to thank God for me finding someone yesterday who was more stressed out than I was. By me trying to help that person calm down, I was able to calm down because I had to be calm to calm that person down. So when you get stressed out, get your eyes off yourself and try to help someone else out. Think about others instead of yourself. Jesus was on the cross now with the two thieves, and the one accepted him and the other didn't. Some people are going to receive you and some people won't. Some people are going to like you and other people won't. You can't please everybody. For a long time, I tried to be a people pleaser and make everybody happy. You can't do it. In fact, you can't even make your significant other happy. You are not responsible for his happiness. She is not responsible for yours. You are responsible for your own happiness. Now, I know I can make my wife miserable, but I'm not responsible for that. You have to realize that your life is impacting other people. You have to realize that you're not alone. So Jesus on the cross, the two on each side, and he tells the one, you'll be with me in paradise. And then he looks and he sees his mother. Even in the midst of your stressed out moments, where you're at the end of your rope, you still have to take care of your responsibilities. You have to step back and say, okay, what really needs to be done right now? And that's where the military training came into helping with the dealing with stress. Because they have a thing at the end of boot camp called the Paragon Trail, where they send you out on a path and they start throwing up flares and explosions, and they have mock bombs going off and just get everybody in the platoon completely stressed out, and they have to find their way out of this trail, and then it comes down to barbed wire fences and machine guns going off, and so it's the most stressful experience that they can put upon you, and you have to focus upon the task at hand. Block everything else out. I was watching the movie Race with Jesse, about the story about Jesse Owens. And when Jesse Owens was in college, it was a big racial thing there. And they were in the locker room, and the football players were coming in, and the coach and all the football players were started yelling and screaming. And Jesse Owens' coach was just saying, all of this is just noise. You have to learn to block all of that out and focus on what is at hand. Do you hear me talking to you, Jesse? And so with everybody else, with all this other noise going on, finally Jesse was able to concentrate on the voice of his coach. Be still and know that I am God. We need to realize that everything else is noise. You need to be able to just block it out. All the expectations that people have on you, all the stuff that you put upon yourself, block it out and focus on God's peace. Throughout the rest of this week, we are going to be looking at both secular ways of handling stress, but we're going to tie it all in with the Bible. So throughout this week, what I want you to do is take the word stress, S-T-R-E-S-S, and put a word for each letter. See, because I could give you mine, but you'll forget them. You have to have them for yourself. This has got to be something that you learn how to handle your stress.